the kindness that changed me from abuser to a protector. The hallway was crowded, a swarm of students moving between classes, the air buzzing with the smell of sweat, cheap cologne, and the faint tang of floor cleaner. Somewhere in the noise, a locker slammed not by accident. A smaller boy, his backpack dangling from one shoulder, it was I, Peter, pinned him against the metal door. My hand gripped the kid's shirt collar, knuckles white, jaw clenched. "Say that again," I growled, my deep voice cutting through the chatter. The boy shook his head, eyes wide. "I didn't mean." I persisted, shoved him again, the clang echoing down the hall. "Say it again." Around us, students formed a hesitant half-circle. Nobody stepped in. Everyone knew my reputation, dangerous and untouchable. Someone whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "Don't mess with him. I did not care who you are." I smirked, but it wasn't the smirk of confidence. It was armor. Thick and cold armor. I finally let go, letting the boy stumble away, clutching his backpack like a shield. As I turned to leave, the boy's eyes caught the faint reflection in a locker mirror. My own face stared back unreadable, except for the flicker in my eyes. It wasn't anger. It was emptiness. Years earlier at age 6, the apartment smelled like cigarette smoke and something burnt. The TV flickered with static in the corner. I sat cross-legged on the floor, my stomach growling. My mother, thin and restless, paced the kitchen, rummaging through nearly empty cabinets. "Ma, I'm hungry," I said quietly. Without turning, she snapped, "I told you, there's nothing right now. Stop whining." I tried again, my voice trembling. "Can't we?" The slap came quickly, stinging my cheeks before I even saw her hand movements. "Stop crying," she hissed. "Crying doesn't put food on the table," my mother said. I learned something that night. Feelings were dangerous. Needing someone meant getting hurt. So little by little, I stopped asking. Foster care at age 8. The social worker's car smelled like hand sanitizer and coffee. I stared out the window as they drove, watching the city blur into strange neighborhoods. "You'll like this family," the woman said. "They've had other kids before." I didn't answer. I knew better than to hope. Every new home came with smile that faded in weeks, sometimes days. Every promise of forever turned into another trash bag of clothes and another drive to somewhere else. In the first foster home, the kids teased me about my hair. I shoved one boy so hard he hit the floor and cried. I didn't get into trouble. The foster dad just told me to keep it down. In the second home, I stole an action figure from the younger kids' room. When they found out, I did apologize. They just glared until I dropped it. By the third home, I had perfected the rules of survival. 1. Never let them think you need them. 2. Hurt first. 3. Keep your heart locked, always. At age 15, power through fear. The cafeteria was loud, filled with the smell of greasy pizza and spilled juice. I sat with my usual crew, boys who liked trouble as much as I did. Across the room, someone laughed. My ears caught just enough to hear the word mother. I was on my feet before I even thought. The boy who said it barely saw the punch coming. A teacher dragged me to the office. Principal's voice was sharp, called my name. "Peter, you're on your last warning. One more fight, I will be punished." "I don't care," as I interrupted, leaning my back in the chair with my arms crossed. And I meant it. Caring was weakness. Weakness got you hurt. When the counselor called me a lost cause, I almost smiled. At least now they were being honest. The first crack. It was late autumn, the kind of rain that turns the streets into mirrors. I walked home from school, hoodie pulled low, shoes splashing through shallow puddles. I spotted movement under a bus stop bench, a scrappy brown puppy, soaked to the skin, shivering so hard its tiny ribs showed. For a moment, I stopped. The old instinct said, "Keep walking. It's not your problem." But my feet didn't move. The puppy looked up, eyes wide and desperate. No sound came out, just a trembling stare. I shoved my hands in my pockets, pretended not to care. Yet I stood there for almost a full minute before finally muttered, "Stupid dog," and walked off. What I didn't realize was that something inside me had hesitated, and that hesitation was the first sign my armor had cracked. The psychology behind the armor. Children who grow up in environments of neglect and abuse often learn to protect themselves by flipping the script. If you hurt first, you can't be hurt. If you scare people, you can't be abandoned. The heart, once opened and curious, becomes locked behind layers of defense. My aggression wasn't born from cruelty. It was survival dressed as dominance. But survival mode has a flaw. When you're always on guard, you can't receive love even if it's standing right in front of you. In the silence, my mind wandered back to the puppy's eyes, not scared of me, not angry, just asking. I shook my head, forcing the image away. I'd learned long ago that caring about something was dangerous. Caring got you hurt. Still, as I drifted into a restless sleep, a quiet, unfamiliar thought pushed its way in. I started wondering, what if someone cared about me like that? I didn't know it yet, but my next foster home and one woman's unshakable kindness would make that question impossible to ignore. The encounter that disarmed me. The car rolled to and stopped in front of a modest, two-story house with a white porch and faded blue shutters. It wasn't fancy, but compared to the apartments and foster homes I had known, it felt stable. The social worker shifted the car into park. "This is Mrs. Sampson," she said, glancing at me. "She's been fostering for over 20 years. She's different." I scoffed under my breath. They all say that. My belongings, 2 plastic bags, and a duffel with a broken zipper sat on the seat beside me. The weight of moving again wasn't heavy anymore. It was just numb. First impressions. The front door opened before they even reached the porch. A woman in her late 50s stepped out, wearing a soft cardigan and an apron dusted with flour. Her hair was a warm mix of silver and chestnut, pulled back into a loose bun. "Peter," she said, smiling like she knew me. "Welcome, sweetheart." Sweetheart. No one had called me that since ever. I didn't respond, just handed her the duffel when she reached for it. She didn't flinch at the weight. Inside, the house smelled like fresh bread and something savory cooking in the kitchen. The walls were lined with family photos, smiling kids, some black, some white, and some clearly not related by blood. Mrs. Sampson showed me to a small room at the end of the hall. "I know moving is never easy," she said. "This is your space. You don't have to unpack right away. Dinner's at 6. I muttered, "Whatever," and dropped my bags on the bed. My first test. That night, after everyone went to bed, I crept into the kitchen. The bread from earlier sat on the counter, wrapped in a towel. My stomach ached. I had eaten much at dinner. Without hesitation, I tore a piece off and stuffed it in my mouth. Halfway through chewing, a voice behind me said, "It's better with butter." I spun around. Mrs. Sampson stood in the doorway, calm, not angry. "I was stealing," I lied. "I didn't say you were." She crossed to the fridge, took out a stick of butter, and slid it toward me. "Next time, don't sneak. If you're hungry, just tell me." I stared, waiting for the lecture, the punishment, something. But she just patted the counter and walked back to her room. The next evening, an extra plate of bread sat on the table before dinner. She didn't say a word about it. School trouble. 3 days later, I was in the principal's office again. This time for shoving a kid who'd bumped into me. Mrs. Sampson arrived, sitting quietly beside me as the principal explained the incident. When the man was done, she didn't scold at me. Instead, she turned to me and asked, "What are you protecting yourself from, Peter?" The question hit me harder than the principal's lecture. I looked away. "Nothing. I'm fine." She didn't push. She just nodded, thanked the principal, and led me to the car. On the ride home, she said, "People who hurt others are usually trying to protect something precious inside. I hope one day you'll trust me enough to tell me what that is." I stared out the window, pretending as if I didn't hear her. The small disruptions. That night, I noticed something strange. The house was quiet. No shouting, no doors slamming, no heavy footsteps in the hall. I could hear the soft ticking of the clock in the living room. I hated it. The quiet made me restless. After everyone went to bed, I wandered into the living room. On a side table sat framed photos not just of Mrs. Sampson's family, but of kids I guessed were fostered children over the years. Some were teenagers like me. Some were younger. All of them smiling. Why would anyone keep pictures of kids who left? In my world, when people left, you erase them. You don't keep reminders. Mrs. Sampson's prayer. One night, I got up for water. As I passed Mrs. Sampson's room, I heard her voice. Not talking to someone, praying. "Oh God, please help Peter. You know the pain he carries. Give me the patience to show him he's safe. Heal his heart." I froze. No one prayed for me. Ever. I backed away from the door before she could hear me. My heart felt tight, and I did understand why. Psychological shift. For someone who's only known hostility, kindness feels like a trick. The brain is wired to expect danger, so when safety appears, it's suspicious. Cognitive dissonance kicks in. Why aren't they punished me? Why aren't they angry? I didn't know it yet, but Mrs. Sampson's consistency began to rewire my sense of what home could mean. One week in, Mrs. Sampson made spaghetti. I sat at the far end of the table, arms crossed. Halfway through the meal, she passed me the bread without looking at me. I took it, muttering thanks under my breath. She smiled. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Something in her tone, warmest, casual, no strings, made me look up. She wasn't smiling at me. She was smiling for me, like she was glad I was there. I quickly looked down again, annoyed at myself for noticing. The crack widens. That night, I found myself staring at a photo on my nightstand. It wasn't there when I moved in. It was she, taken it the day I arrived. Mrs. Sampson had printed it and put it in a frame. I didn't know whether to throw it away or keep it. I settled for turning it face down. Still, part of me wondered why she'd bothered. A week later, I walked home from school when I saw the same stray puppy again, this time sniffing through a pile of trash. I crouched down. "You're still alive, huh?" The puppy wagged its tail and licked my hand. For some reason, I did pull away. I let the puppy's warmth sink into my skin for a few seconds before standing. "Go on," I muttered and walked away. But as I reached Mrs. Sampson's porch, I glanced back. The puppy was still watching me. And for the first time in years, I felt something I couldn't name. The battle inside. I had been at Mrs. Sampson's for 3 weeks. From the outside, nothing about me seemed different, still kept to myself, still walked with that heavy-lidded glare that warned people not to get too close. But on the inside, something was shifting. It was small at first, a hesitation before snapping at someone, a glance at Mrs. Sampson's face after I said something sharply, waiting for anger that never came. It was annoying. It was confusing. And it was dangerous, because part of me liked it. 2 worlds within me. At school, I was still that guy, the one who could make a freshman cry with a single glare. It was a role I'd worn so long it fit like skin. But at home, the role didn't work. Mrs. Sampson didn't flinch when I scowled. She didn't match my silence with coldness. One evening after dinner, she handed me a dish towel. "Dry," she said. I narrowed my eyes. "I'm not doing chores." "Then don't," she replied, unfazed. She turned her back, humming while she washed the dishes. 5 minutes later, I was drying plates. I told myself it was only because I hated seeing water spots. The puppy returns. One rainy afternoon, I cut through the alley behind the grocery store and froze. The same scrappy puppy was there, pawing at a soggy cardboard box. It looked thinner than before, its fur patchy. Without thinking, I reached into my backpack and pulled out the sandwich Mrs. Sampson had packed for me. I tore it in half and crouched low. "Here, don't choke." The puppy snatched the bread and wolfed it down, tail wagging like I was the best thing that had ever happened to it. I didn't pet it. Not yet. But I stayed until the sandwich was gone. As I walked away, I caught myself smiling. I quickly wiped it off. My first confession. That night, I lingered in the living room after dinner. Mrs. Sampson was knitting, the steady click of needles filling the quiet. Without looking at her, I said, "My dad left when I was 7. It wasn't planned." The words just fell out. She paused, then set her knitting down. "That must have hurt." I laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Nah, he was never around anyway." Mrs. Sampson didn't push. She just nodded, her eyes steady, telling me she didn't believe me, but she'd wait until I was ready to say the truth. Psychologists call this earned security, when someone who grew up unsafe begins to trust again through consistent, reliable care. It's not instant. It's not smooth. But every time Mrs. Sampson responded with patience instead of punishment, my brain began to redraw the map of what home meant to be. In my dream, that night, I dreamed of the puppy again. Only this time, it wasn't in the rain. It was in a warm kitchen, lying by the stove. And I was sitting on the floor beside it, scratching behind its ears. When I woke up, there was a lump in my throat. I told myself it was just a dream. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. My quiet victory. 2 days later, I was walking past the bike racks at school when I saw a younger boy drop his books. A group of older kids laughed instead of helping. The old Peter would have ignored it, or maybe made a joke himself. But this time, I bent down, gathered the books, and handed them back. The boy mumbled, "Thanks," and ran off. I stood there a moment, wondering why my heart felt lighter. That evening, I sat on the porch steps, watching the sunset burn orange over the rooftops. The puppy wandered into my mind again, and I found myself wondering where it was sleeping tonight. Inside, Mrs. Sampson called for dinner. I hesitated, then went inside, not because I had to but because I wanted to. It was a small choice. But in the battle inside me, it was a win. The kitchen conversation. When we reached her apartment, she surprised me by gesturing toward the kitchen. Set it on the counter. And since you're here, you can help me chop these vegetables. I hesitated. I don't cook. Mrs. Sampson smiled faintly. That's why I'm teaching you. I sat at the counter, awkwardly handling the knife. She guided my hands, showing me how to slice without crushing the tomatoes. At first, I cut too quickly, as if to get it over with. But soon, her calm presence slowed me down. You've got quick hands, she remarked. You just don't trust them yet. The story Mrs. Sampson told me. As we cooked, she began to tell me about her late husband. He was a hard man, she said, eyes fixed on the steaming pot. Never raised a hand on me, but his words could break a person down. I stayed because I thought I could change him. She glanced at me. People don't change until they want to. And even then, it takes someone to show them how. I swallowed hard. Did he ever change? Asked. She shook her head. No, but I learned that my value wasn't in what I could fix. It was in what I could live and give freely. We both worked in silence for a while, the rich smell of stew filling the air. I felt something stir inside me, a discomfort that wasn't quite guilt but close. It was the realization that I did want people telling stories about me that way one day. My mirror moment. After dinner was ready, Mrs. Sampson served me a bowl without asking if I'd stay. It was the first warm, home-cooked meal I'd had in months. Between bites, I noticed the framed photographs on the wall, her as a young woman, her with community members, children laughing in summer camps. You do all this for people? I asked, gesturing to the photos. She nodded. The community raised me. I'm just returning the favor. And then she said it, the sentence that landed like a stone in water, sending ripples through me. Peter, you remind me of my husband before life hardened him completely. The difference is, you still have time to choose another path. She said. It was like looking into a mirror I'd avoided for years. I saw the anger, the mistrust, the way I pushed people away before they could hurt me. I saw the future version of myself, if I keep walking the same road, and I didn't like it. Psychological insight. Mrs. Sampson acted as a secure base figure, offering Peter both stability and challenge, a combination shown in psychology to be critical for behavior change in at-risk youth. Her method wasn't confrontation, but reflective mirroring, helping me see a future version of myself without judgment, which sparked my self-motivation to alter my behavior. The public thank you. Months later, at the center's annual appreciation dinner, Mrs. Sampson took the stage. She began listing volunteers by name, thanking each for their service. I didn't think much of it until she called my name. When I walked up, she handed me a framed certificate. For protecting not just this community's safety, she said into the microphone, but its dignity. The applause that followed felt different from anything I had known before. It wasn't fear-based respect, it was trust. My realization. After the dinner, I found myself walking home in the cool night air. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who took what I wanted, pushed people aside, and wore cruelty like armor. I thought about Mrs. Sampson, her quiet challenges, her refusal to give up on me. I thought about that boy, Joe, and the countless others who might be watching me now. And for the first time, I understood. Changing myself wasn't the end of the journey. It was the beginning of becoming someone who could change others. Psychology insights. My transformation reflects behavioral redirection, taking aggressive traits and channeling them into protective actions, a known method in rehabilitation psychology. Mrs. Sampson modeled authoritative mentorship, firm boundaries combined with belief in my capacity for good, creating the conditions for lasting change. The moment I confronted the man at the event mirrors a self-redefinition point, where the individual acts according to their new identity rather than their old impulses. Moral lesson. Even the hardest hearts can soften when met with genuine kindness and patience. Change isn't instant, and it isn't perfect, but one act of compassion can light a fire in someone's soul that transforms not only their life, but the lives of others they touch.